Back. This is all new this morning. Restaurants will be allowed to welcome more Western New Yorkers in as capacity restrictions are loosening a bit. We told you earlier how restaurants outside of New York City can now operate at 75% capacity. Before today, it was 50%. It is welcome news for many local businesses.
But with lower capacities and shutdowns over the last year, many businesses had to cut their staff. Look at this. The Bureau of Labor Statistics found New York State lost about 23,000 restaurant jobs in January alone. Since February of last year, the restaurant industry lost about 38% of its job force. The hope here with this wider capacity is some workers will be brought back. So this morning we're going in depth on what this change means for our local restaurants. We're joined now by Tommy Lombardo, who runs Ristorante Lombardo on Hertel Avenue. Tommy, good morning to you. Thanks so much for being with us. We certainly appreciate your time this morning. Talk to us about how this change really impacts your business.
Good morning. Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me. Any loosenings of the restrictions is absolutely welcome news. The reality of this loosening, though, is that we still are required to keep 6 feet distance between diners, different parties, and that doesn't really allow us, specifically the way we have our dining room laid out, to really increase our capacity. So really what we'd like to see is that restriction to be loosened, and then you could really see capacity start to increase.
You're specifically talking about the 6 feet social distance regulation.
Exactly. So that hasn't been loosened. So you really can't put more tables or chairs in the restaurants until you can loosen that restriction, because 6 feet is a lot more distance than you would have typically seen between tables in a restaurant.
We're hearing about schools and parents who are pushing for 3 feet. Would that benefit you if it was to move to 3 feet for restaurants?
Absolutely.
Okay. And let's also talk about bringing employees back. Because you're not able to increase capacity right now, are you even able to bring any employees back with the 75%?
We haven't specifically looked at bringing employees back when they brought back 75%, but we are now looking to hire, looking to the spring and the summer when the patio starts to open, and we are anticipating more restrictions loosening, and I'm hopeful that it's going to happen quickly. When I say quickly, I mean, all of a sudden 4 weeks will go by and it's here before we know it. So we are really hopeful that things are going to continue down this path towards increased capacity and loosening restrictions.
Tommy, talk to us about, as you look ahead to the future, we know the PPP loan that has come from the federal government has helped so many businesses, especially restaurants. And we know that as part of that $1.9 trillion package that was just passed recently within the last couple of weeks, included in that package is another PPP loan. So how will that affect your business, and how does it affect restaurants as a whole?
It's huge. It's extremely welcome and helpful. It's been, for so many, you were just talking about movie theaters, I think, before this. I mean, any business that is predicated upon the gathering of strangers and the public in small spaces is really hurting very badly right now. So any help that we can get and any assistance is extremely welcome.
Tommy,
needed.
I'd love to get your perspective too, being on Hertel, where you've been for decades. Let's look at the landscape of that street that happened since the pandemic. We saw Pastries by Camille close. We saw the bookstore close, a number of local businesses. Talk to us about what you see as a future for Hertel and how the street was impacted by the past year.
That's a great question. I'm definitely confident it's going to bounce back. We're really fortunate to have a long history on Hertel Avenue, and we have a great customer base that's been really supportive. But if you were a newer business that was just getting started out, and especially if you had smaller square footage, we have a wine bar that has very, very small square footage, and that's where the pain is really acute. It's really, really tough when you don't have much square footage to work with. And so the Camille's closed, Belcito closed. You mentioned a couple other places, and a lot of these places are just tight quarters, and they just couldn't, they couldn't make it. And through no fault of their own. There's just, there's just nothing you can work with if you don't have the space to spread things out and put people. And once things reopen, Hurdle's still in good shape. There are still, I was just walking down there with my family a couple Sundays ago on a sunny afternoon, and there's still a lot of retail that's clearly open and operating. And I think that there's also restaurants that haven't even opened yet, like More Room was planning on opening, but they're still there. And it looks like they're still, ready to pull the trigger as soon as things start to loosen up a little bit. So I think that as soon as things loosen up, there'll be a lot of activity.
Well, I'll tell you, I was just on Hurdle Avenue on Friday for a fish fry at the Wellington Pub, and Hurdle was booming. So it's so good to see people out there. Yeah, exactly. People out there supporting our local businesses, and so important that with this increased capacity, we do get out there to support those businesses. Tommy, thanks so much for being with us. We certainly appreciate your time this morning.